All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and we've been going over the FishCreek Animal Hospital case study for the Terry Felke-Morris Web Development and Design Foundations, or whatever it's called, book 8th edition. And I'm up to Chapter 7. I do want to mention before I go on, I found my error from Chapter 6. The error was this. When I was referencing my CSS file, all right, let's see. That wasn't the problem. The problem was when I was trying to reference the graphics. Okay, the graphics that were in here. And let me bring up the CSS file. That's the problem. It was right here. I had URL images / gradient blue, and here I had images / bluefish. I had to go up a level because of the way that I've set it up, because I've tried to think about doing this the right way to start with. And what I mean by that is I've tried to put some semblance of order to this. And again, what I mean by this is here's my 4 pages, but I already have an images folder, and I already have a CSS folder, and I went back and rewrote the FishCreek CSS. So what's not bad about this at all is what I ended up doing was really cleaning this up, because the file was a little bit, I'm not going to say dirty, but the way it was set up wasn't all that great. All right. So let me bring it back up, and you'll see what it looks like now, the way that it was supposed to look. So there is the home page, and for some reason it's not accepting the other 2 pages, but I'll fix that right away. All right, so there's mine. Services and Ask the Vet. Okay, so that's the way it looks. You see I've got the symbol there now. One thing I noticed, I went back and looked at the author's page, and that's really about the first time I've done that, but the author had a few things that I didn't have, so I made this a mail to down here because I really should have from the get-go. So, long story short, or short story long, depending on your point of view, I can now take and copy the Chapter 6 into Chapter 7. Make sure, yep, I've got all mine closed. So now when I come in here and I open all of these, I'm not going to open the contact. We're getting close. I think it's Chapter 9 is the contact. Whoops. Chapter 9, I believe, will be the contact form. So we've got our index, we've got our services, we've got our Ask Vet, and we've got our FishCreek. Okay. You can see I prettied it up a little bit, so things line up a lot nicer, because I kept looking for the mistake. And like I said, I live by 2 mantras in life. You may or may not care about this, but the first is that my life is constantly a work in progress. And the second one, it's in the code, stupid. That's all I can tell you, because when you can't figure out something, it's in the code. Okay, so let's go on. Chapter 7. We're going to kind of mobilize this. So it says here, in this case study, you configure the website to display in mobile devices using the single column format that's shown right here. You will code media queries for mobile styles, modify the current desktop styles, update the home page, the services page, and the Ask the Vet page. Use the Chapter 6 FishCreek as your starting point. Already did that. When you finished, the website should look the same in desktop browsers. So it should look, all right, it'll look very similar. The mobile one will look like this. And the it'll look pretty much the same way it does right now on a regular device. So Create a new folder, modify, boom, boom, boom. All right, so we're going to do all this. So first, create a folder called FishCreek7. I call mine FishCreek Chapter07. Copy all the files. Done that. Modify the home page. Open the index.html page in the text editor and code what's shown there as follows. Typical HTML viewport tag. So I'm going to put this in here. Let's take a second after we do that and go over what that means. So I don't know if it really matters where I put it in here, but I'll just throw it right there. All right. In fact, let's put it right next to the other meta tag. Viewport, we're saying that use the entire width of the device when possible and bring it up at 100%. Okay, so we've got that in there. The home page displays a phone number in the contact information area. Wouldn't it be handy if a person with a smartphone could click that and call right away? Do that using a telephone link. Configure a hyperlink assigned to the ID named mobile that consists of the number as shown. And I believe at least, and I'm going ahead a little bit, that I'm supposed to replace what's in here with that. That didn't work. Copy. So I'm going to take this line that's in here and just comment it out. Right? Let's see what that did as far as the look of this. Okay, you'll notice it's now hyperlinked. Okay, don't open. I'm not calling this from a phone, and that's the reason that it's not really doing anything. It's designed to work up with a phone, but you may or may not be able to see down here in the bottom left corner that when I do highlight it, it puts the telephone tag on there. So that's the first thing I wanted to do. But wait a minute, a telephone link could confuse those visiting the site with a desktop browser. Code another phone number directly after that hyperlink. Code a span element to an ID named desktop around the phone number. Now, bottom line is, and I'm trying to hopefully make a little bit of sense here. Oh, got it. And what the author is saying is that the system will figure out whether it's using a desktop or whether it's using a laptop. You'll notice that when we put this in here and we run it, we're not seeing, I guess we are seeing two numbers. I think we'll handle that in the CSS in just a minute. After that span, we will need a BR tag. So we now have both of these, and let's worry about that in a couple minutes, okay? Don't worry about the two numbers that are now on the page. You'll configure that in the CSS in tasks 5 through 7. All right, save it. It should now look familiar to what's shown, or similar to what's shown there. So I guess what they do want is that BR tag that we have here for that to be removed. And there it is. Okay, so we've done all that. Modify the services page. Open up the services page, add the viewport tag, save and test in a browser, use HTML validator to make sure there's no errors. Do the same thing in the Ask Vet page. So bottom line is, let's jump up to here. Let's go to our meta tag that we put into, guess we put it into services accidentally first. Doesn't matter. Now it's also in the index, and it is in the Ask Vet page. All right, so we've done all those. So I've made that modification, made that modification. All right. Modify the desktop CSS. Open up the FishCreek. Remember the telephone number you didn't link to. Configure it so the phone number is as shown below. So we'll put this in and then we'll talk about it. Copy. I'm just moving stuff down as I come here. That's all. So I'm going to have some mobile display none and desktop display inline. So there are going to be things that I do and do not want to work with when I'm running on a mobile device. And we've talked about this before. The thing is, you don't want to show a lot of fancy schmancy images, etc. when you're working in that way. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So save this, use the validator. I'm going to wait until I'm all done and validate at the very bottom. You can see what I have left. Not a whole lot. I'm up to step 6. So we did that. Code the following new styles. Configure a body element selector with a margin. Within the media query. So we want to put a media query in here. So again, what we're saying is screen only with a max width of 1024. Now, historically, from what I can tell, media queries tend to go near the bottom, and I'm just going to put in here even a comment that says media queries. It'll be pretty obvious that we're doing media queries, but still. All right, so this says if I'm working with a screen with a max width of up to 1024 pixels. So we want a body. I'm just going to grab everything that's there. Okay, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. It's going to look a little ugly for a minute, but that's fine. We'll fix it. Configure a body element. So body. We want the margin and the padding set to 0. We want the background color set to white. That looks pretty good. All right. We want the wrapper ID selector. It says there, set the width to auto, the min width to 0, and the margin to 0. Again, you may not like the way that I'm doing this, which is fine. But to me, it's making some sense to do it this way. Okay. Next, we've got the H1 element. So configure the H1 selector, set the margin to 0. Set the font size to 1.8 ems and set the line height to 200%. So that's done. Then the nav selector. It says here the mobile layout uses a single column. Set float to none. And the width to auto. We're getting there. Next, we need the nav LI. And we want to set the display to inline block. Next, we've got our nav A. And we want to set the padding to 1M. And we want to set the font size to 120%. Next, we've got the nav UL. We want centered text. We want 0 padding. We want 0 margin. Two more things to go. We want our main. For main, as you can see, we want the font size a little smaller, 90%. We want the margin set to 0. And we want left padding set to 2 M's. All right, we're almost finished. Finally, we want the footer. We want there to be 0 margin. And I believe that's all the changes that we were asked to make right here. So let me save. Save it and use the validator. I'm going to do that in just a minute. So again, now we've got step 7, and then we're finished. All right, configure the smartphone CSS. Open the CSS. We did that. Now we want to configure it for a smartphone. So this is things with a max width of up to 768. So in other words, this is our second media query. So that's, I believe this is desktop. All right. Then we want to come down here, and with a max width of 768, I believe this is tablet. So now we'll do the tablet stuff, and you can see what we have again. Now when we get done with this, we should, being the opportune word, be finished with this exercise. So let me copy this. It looks like it's all stuff for right here. So all right, let's paste that in. So the first thing we want to do is we want a header. And it says the big fish is too wide to display on a mobile device. Your design strategy is to configure a smaller image, little fish. So, all right. So what I have to do is I'm going to go up and just grab what we did up above. This was our big fish. So I'm going to grab that. We'll change it to little fish in just a moment. All right. So instead of big fish, it'll be LIL fish, not LOL. All right. So it's too wide to display on a mobile device. Your design strategy is to configure a smaller image, little fish, as the header for the mobile display. Write the style definition to use that as a background image that does not repeat and has the center position. So we've got that. Now I don't know if I have that image yet, so I'll have to go back and check that. I'm not worried about it right now. Configure my H1. Set my font size to 1M and the line height to 120%. So font size to 1.5 M and the line height to 120%. And hopefully you can see in many ways, for lack of better words, this is kind of a balancing act. And what I mean is you have to sit there and take a look at everything to make sure it's looking the way you want it to look. All right, the A tags in the navigation area. Set the block, set the display to block, set the padding to 0.2 M's, set the font size to 1.3 M's. All right, that's most of it, but it looks like there's still a little bit more. Also, configure a 1 pixel bottom border. Border, bottom, 1px, solid, we'll say, pound 330000. Our nav LI, we want to set the display to block. Our nav UL, we want to set our text alignment to left. Our main element, we want padding left, and we want it set to 1M. We want a category selector, that's a class selector. Fix these right away too, so they're done. I don't have to worry about them. That's for the phone number, what I'm doing right now, which basically says that display on a mobile phone, display the mobile one, and on a regular phone, display the other one. While the text shadow property can work well in the logo area, it can make content difficult to read on a mobile device. So set the text shadow to none, and you'll oftentimes do that. You know, these special effects that look really nice, all right, in one place, you know, in one medium, may just be terrible on another. Configure the CSS for the phone number as shown below, so that's what I just did. And I should be finished. All right. I like to take a look here and make sure nothing is, you know, all the stuff that's supposed to be here, that I didn't break anything. So in other words, if something is just in black here, I missed a comma or I should say a semicolon or something. So far it looks good. There you can see I missed something. So it's not left padding, it's padding left. Okay, so that fixed that. Far as I can tell, everything else looks okay. So we've done all that. Save the file. Let's validate everything, every file, before we go and try to run this and make sure that it works. All right. So first, let's go to the CSS validator. And file upload. No file chosen. Well, again, we're going to bring up FishCreek, Chapter07, CSS, FishCreek CSS. Check it. We found errors. Looks like one error. Line 241, so it's pretty far down. It's something in here. Did it give us a URI FishCreek parse error? Well, it looks like it is in the last one that we put in. There's something in here that it doesn't like. The only max 768 header. Position, background, repeat. I don't see anything offhand that looks funky there. Ah! I don't have my ending... There. I don't have my ending tag, which that tag went with this tag right here. So let's try it one more time. No error found. There's good. So, HTML validator. So we'll validate our 3 files to make sure we didn't break anything with what we just put in there. We should always be doing this, and I will require this in everything and in the assignments that you do. So, index, no DT element in scope, but a DT end tag scene. So that's the only error, so let's go back and look at that. That's an index. DLDT up. DT, 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 DDDD, DDDD, DDDD. There's a DT right there, and I don't know what that's going with. Okay, probably put that in the last chapter, so that would be erroneous in there also. Let's back up. And now it's clean. So our index is clean. Services says it's clean. And ask a vet. And it's clean. So good job. All right. So let's go back to here. Let's bring up the index file. Now let's see if it's becoming responsive. So you can see how it's looking different. It's got a nice 1-column format when it's real small like this. As we bring this up, you'll notice when we get to this point right here, which is probably the 768, now we lose the logo. Now it's back. When we get to a certain point, must be after 1024. Now we're losing the color. You can check my other pages as well to make sure that they work the same way. Looks like that does. Ask the vet. And our contact still looks a little goofy, so that's no biggie one way or the other. All right. So we've come to the end of another chapter, the way it appears. And keep those both up, I think. So that's the end of the material for Chapter 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab everything, throw it into a folder, call the folder Chapter 8. So now I've got an excellent starting point. And Chapter 8, one of these chapters coming up. My machine's acting a little weird here. I want to get to the end of Chapter 8, so that's 9, so that's too far. All right. So this is what we're going to change. Looks like we're working with tables here. So we're going to create a table, and we're going to use CSS to style the table. All right, so I'll be back with that particular lecture in just a couple minutes.